The United Nations is singling out parts of Africa and Asia for the fastest growing economies in the world, even as overall economic growth is expected to grow, but slowly at about 2.8%. Ingo Pittele from the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs joins us now to go over the new outlook. Ingo, welcome to Arise Xchange, and thank you for walking over from the United Nations today. Appreciate seeing you. So when you look at this report, where are the fastest growing parts of the world? And when we say fastest growing, we're still not saying terrific.
I think it's first important to note that the world economy continues to grow at only a modest pace, and we expect only a slight improvement in 2015 and the rest of the year and into 2016. The fastest growing regions in the world are, as has been the case for the past few years, East Asia, also South Asia, where we have seen a considerable improvement over the past year or two, and also parts of Africa.
What's interesting about Asia, when we think Asia, we think China. But what's interesting in this report is other countries are starting to step in as China's growth starts to slow.
Exactly. That's in China, we are seeing some moderation in growth. It's actually not an enormous slowdown. It's coming down gradually. So we expect China to grow by 7% this year, about 6.8% next year. And at the same time, we are seeing faster growth in some other pretty large East Asian economies. For example, in Indonesia, we're seeing a pickup in growth. We're seeing faster growth in the Philippines, and also notably in India. India is one of the major growth stories for the coming years.
What's interesting when you look at the growth, my question is sort of what industries are driving this? And to some extent, is it technology, especially when you look at Africa, when you look at Kenya and Nigeria and even Rwanda? It looks like heavy bets on technology and infrastructure improvements help drive this growth.
I think that's correct. It is technology, it's infrastructure, but it's also overall just a very balanced structure of growth where both on the internal side, we see some positive dynamics in terms of consumption and investment demand. At the same time, the government finances are strong. And at the same time, there are some positive impulses from exports. And actually, the big story which we highlight in the report is the commodity price decline.
Right. So what oil,
but also other
very hard.
But also other commodities are declining. We are seeing a long-term decline in the prices of many metals. For example, copper is declining.
Which has really hurt countries like South Africa, for example, and countries that are heavy on commodities. Is there anything about how the government approaches the economies that you could say whether it helps or hurts?
I mean, there's, of course, a lot of different ways how governments, what governments can do to mitigate the impact of the lower commodity prices, or to stimulate the impact of this for the commodity importers. Because that's the story for those. We have, on the one hand, we have countries that are losing out, the major commodity exporters. At the same time, we have a lot of countries that are gaining. For example, in East Asia, in South Asia, but also in Europe, we have seen actually some improvement in the European Union where lower energy prices have been beneficial.
Real quickly, 2.8% though globally, not really strong enough to create a lot of jobs, is it?
That's right. It's well below what we have seen before the crisis. It's also below what would be needed to create a lot of jobs, to make very strong progress in terms of reducing poverty around the globe. So we're hoping that from 2016-17 on, growth will pick up and we will see some more significant improvements in development.
Ingo Pittele, the Economics Affairs Officer with the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Thank you for coming over. Interesting report. Ahead, how much would you pay to shoot a rare rhino, and would you be willing to be our favorite person of the day? You're watching Arise Xchange. Stay with us. That was really